I never thought death would find me that night. But when it did, I came face to face with Jesus, and what he revealed about waking up between 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. will shake everything you thought you knew about the spiritual world. My name is Rachel Matthews, and I was a 34-year-old marketing executive in Chicago, living a life of success and control. Until I died. What Jesus showed me about those early morning hours is more than just a coincidence, it's a divine calling. If you've ever woken up during this time, you need to hear this. But before we start, please let me know where you're listening from. It will be nice to feel closer, even if we're physically apart. Also, don't forget to like and comment on what you thought about this near-death experience testimony. Let's have a fair and open discussion so we can learn from each other on this channel. Enjoy listening. It happened on a November night 2 years ago. I had been working late, pushing myself to complete a critical project for a major client. Stress had become my constant companion, and my body was showing signs of complete exhaustion. I remember feeling a sharp pain in my chest, something I had been ignoring for weeks, attributing it to stress and long hours. Little did I know, I was experiencing a massive heart attack. As I collapsed in my home office, the world around me began to fade. The last thing I remember was the sound of my laptop hitting the floor and the flickering of my desk lamp. Then, darkness. What happened next is something I could never have imagined. I found myself in a realm of indescribable light and peace. The transition was instantaneous. One moment I was in my dark, silent apartment, and the next, I was surrounded by a presence so profound, so loving, that words feel inadequate to describe it. And there, standing before me, was Jesus. He wasn't how traditional religious paintings depicted him. He was both familiar and extraordinary, a being of pure light and infinite compassion. His eyes carried the depth of eternity, and when he spoke, it was not just with words, but with a communication that transcended human language. I was in a state between life and death when I encountered Jesus. In that place, he addressed me directly, saying, "Rachel, I want to reveal something crucial to you, something that many of my children misunderstand about the hours between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. Jesus explained to me that these hours are not random intervals of time. He stated plainly that they are, in fact, a divine appointment. According to him, the time between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. is when the boundary between the physical realm and the spiritual realm is particularly thin. He referred to these hours as the last watch of the night, and explained that during this period, the possibility of encountering the supernatural is heightened. I recall him saying, "This is a time when the spiritual atmosphere is most receptive." In the conversation that followed, Jesus demonstrated to me that the phenomenon of being awakened during these hours is not solely the result of physical or psychological factors. Many people believe that disruptions in sleep are due to stress, natural circadian rhythms, or even the fluctuation of hormones. However, Jesus made it clear that these wakeful periods carry a much deeper meaning. They are invitations for his children to engage actively in spiritual warfare, to intercede on behalf of others, and to receive divine revelations that are essential for their spiritual growth. Jesus drew a parallel with the biblical account of Jacob wrestling with the divine messenger. In that story, found in Genesis 32 verses 24 to 30, Jacob struggled with a mysterious being throughout the night and emerged with a blessing. Jesus explained that just as Jacob's night encounter resulted in transformation and blessing, the hours between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. present similar opportunities for transformation in the lives of those who are awakened. He stated, "These hours are opportunities for spiritual transformation. They are moments when the barriers between heaven and earth become thin." I noted that this explanation resonated with the scriptural theme of seeking God and receiving his guidance in moments of quiet reflection, as encouraged in Psalm 46 verse 10, which instructs us to be still and know that I am God. During this experience, Jesus made it clear that there is a spiritual battle that takes place during these early morning hours. He taught me that while the forces of darkness are active and try to exert influence over the coming day, God has appointed ordinary people to act as spiritual watchmen. These watchmen are to stand in the gap through prayer and vigilance. He stated plainly that the awakenings many experience are not inconveniences, but rather divine summons, calls to action in the larger context of spiritual warfare. In this regard, I recall the biblical exhortation from 1 Peter 5 verse 8, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour." Jesus went on to outline 3 specific actions for those who are awakened during these hours. First, Jesus emphasized that dreams are not random or insignificant. Instead, he explained that dreams are channels through which divine guidance is communicated. According to him, when people recall their dreams and take time to interpret them, they are opening themselves to receiving insights, warnings, and guidance from God. I was instructed to pay attention to the details of my dreams and to discern the messages contained within them. This idea aligns with the biblical narrative in Joel 2 verses 28 to 29, which proclaims that God will pour out his Spirit upon all people, resulting in dreams and visions that serve as signs for the future. The second action Jesus recommended was to engage in meditation and to listen intently during these quiet hours. He explained that the silence present in the early morning is not an empty void but a space filled with spiritual significance. During these moments of undisturbed quiet, one can connect more deeply with God and receive divine instructions. I was told that silence is the language of the Spirit and that by meditating, I could attune myself to the voice of the divine. This teaching is consistent with the instruction given in Psalm 62 verse 1, "Truly my soul finds rest in God, my salvation comes from him," and reinforces the importance of quiet and focused time in God's presence. Finally, Jesus emphasized the importance of speaking words of blessing and protection. He instructed me to declare God's promises and to affirm his sovereignty through spoken declarations. Jesus explained that the words we speak carry spiritual power and that by declaring his sovereignty, we can shift the spiritual atmosphere in our favor. I was reminded of Proverbs 18 verse 21, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue," and the words of Ephesians 6 verses 10 to 18, which remind us that we are engaged in a spiritual battle and must put on the full armor of God. By proclaiming his truth and promises, we actively participate in the divine plan of protection and transformation. Throughout this encounter, I understood that the early morning hours are not solely intended for individual spiritual growth. Jesus revealed to me that they are part of a larger cosmic spiritual dynamic. He made it clear that those who experience these awakenings are active participants in a broader spiritual narrative. Our actions during these moments of wakefulness are not only beneficial to our own spiritual journey, but have the potential to influence the lives of others. Many people remain unaware of the true nature of these experiences, accepting the scientific explanations that attribute them to biological phenomena. However, Jesus showed me that these explanations only scratch the surface of a much deeper spiritual reality. In addition to explaining the significance of these hours, Jesus also spoke about the practical impact of engaging with the spiritual realm during these times. He recounted instances in which the wakefulness of his children had led to the prevention of disasters, the healing of broken families, and the redirection of negative spiritual energies. These occurrences were not random acts or coincidences, but were, according to him, carefully orchestrated divine interventions. I listened as he explained that the supernatural events that occur during these hours are part of his redemptive work, a work in which every individual has a role to play. This teaching is reflected in passages like Romans 8 verses 38 to 39, where it is stated that nothing can separate us from the love of God, a reminder of the protective and unifying power of his presence. One of the key points Jesus made was that the scientific and psychological explanations for our wakefulness, stress, circadian rhythms, and hormonal fluctuations are limited in their scope. While these explanations may account for some aspects of the phenomenon, they do not address the full spiritual significance of what is happening. Instead, Jesus taught that these early morning awakenings are divine invitations. They call us to engage in spiritual warfare and intercession, to listen to the voice of the Spirit, and to proclaim the promises of God. This perspective is not meant to dismiss scientific insights, but to complement them with a deeper understanding of the spiritual realm. As stated in 2 Corinthians 5 verse 7, "For we walk by faith, not by sight," indicating that there is more to our existence than what can be measured or observed by human senses alone. Jesus was careful to emphasize that the purpose of these awakenings is not to instill fear or to overwhelm those who experience them. Rather, he clarified that his intention was to invite his children into a partnership in his redemptive work. He explained that he does not wake people during these hours to frighten them, but to collaborate with them in achieving spiritual breakthroughs. In this context, the role of the individual becomes one of active participation rather than passive reception. Jesus' words were direct and unembellished, meant to convey a sense of duty and purpose rather than an invitation to dwell in anxiety. The message is one of empowerment, a call to recognize the potential for positive change that lies within these moments of wakefulness. I was made aware that the power of these hours extends beyond personal spiritual development. According to Jesus, the activities carried out during these early morning hours have cosmic implications. They are connected to the overall spiritual state of communities, families, and even entire nations. He pointed out that when his children rise during these hours and engage in intercessory prayer, they have the ability to influence the spiritual trajectory of the coming day. The idea that each moment of wakefulness is an opportunity for divine intervention resonated with the scriptural message found in James 5 verse 16, which states, "The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective." This notion underscores the responsibility that comes with the awareness of these divine appointments. Jesus also provided clear instruction regarding how to approach the phenomena of dreams during these early hours. He explained that dreams serve as a direct line of communication from God. When a person recalls a dream, it is essential to consider the possibility that the dream contains a message intended for them. This message could be a form of guidance, a warning, or simply a sign of God's ongoing work in their life. I was encouraged to record my dreams and seek a reasonable interpretation of their significance. In this respect, Jesus' teaching is reminiscent of the guidance given in Acts 2 verse 17, where the coming of the Holy Spirit is associated with the outpouring of dreams and visions. The interpretation of dreams, when done with discernment and prayer, can lead to a greater understanding of one's purpose and the divine plan that God has set in motion. The instruction to meditate and listen during these hours was also given in a clear and straightforward manner. Jesus explained that the silence and stillness of the early morning are ideal for deep contemplation and communion with the divine. In those moments, without the distractions that often accompany the day, one can focus on the guidance of the Holy Spirit. I was told that meditation in this context does not require elaborate rituals or practices, but rather a simple and sincere effort to quiet the mind and heart. This practice aligns with the exhortation in Psalm 1 verse 2, where it is said that the one who meditates on God's law day and night will be like a tree planted by streams of water. The emphasis here is on regularity and sincerity in seeking God's presence. The third instruction, to declare and decree, was communicated in equally plain terms. Jesus explained that words have power and that when believers speak forth God's promises, they are actively participating in the spiritual battle that unfolds each day. He emphasized that declarations of God's sovereignty are not merely empty words, but are infused with spiritual authority. I was reminded of the biblical principle found in Mark 11 verse 23, which speaks of the power of faith-filled declarations. In practical terms, this means that when one speaks blessings over their life, their family, or their community, they are contributing to the establishment of God's will on earth. The act of declaring God's truth is an acknowledgement of His power and serves as a form of spiritual resistance against negative forces. Throughout our encounter, Jesus stressed that these actions, recalling dreams, meditating in silence, and declaring God's promises, are not optional. They are integral to the role that His children are meant to play in the divine narrative. He explained that every instance of wakefulness during the early morning hours is a call to act. These calls are meant to be responded to with deliberate and informed steps that align with God's will. The clear message is that individuals are not to dismiss these moments as mere inconveniences. Instead, they are to see them as opportunities for intervention and transformation, both in their personal lives and in the wider context of spiritual realities. It is important to note that Jesus' explanation was offered in a manner that emphasizes partnership. He made it clear that His children are not expected to carry the weight of spiritual warfare alone. Rather, He invites them to join Him in His redemptive work. This partnership involves acknowledging the divine significance of every moment and acting in accordance with the guidance provided. As I listened, I understood that the invitation was extended not to a select few, but to all who are open to recognizing the signs of God's active presence. This perspective is supported by the message of John 10 verse 10, where Jesus states, "I came that they may have life and have it abundantly." The abundant life that He refers to includes the awareness and participation in these divine appointments. Following the detailed explanation of the spiritual significance of the early morning hours, I was shown numerous examples of how such awakenings had a positive impact on various lives. Jesus explained that throughout history, many people have been awakened during these hours without fully understanding the spiritual significance of their experience. In many cases, these individuals simply attributed their awakenings to stress or the natural functioning of the body. However, Jesus made it clear that behind these seemingly ordinary incidents lies a profound invitation to engage with the spiritual realm. He noted that countless families, communities, and even entire regions have benefited from the timely interventions that occur during these moments of wakefulness. The emphasis here was on the proactive nature of these interventions, as opposed to a passive acceptance of daily events. The scriptural lesson in Romans 12 verse 2, which calls believers not to conform to the patterns of this world, but to be transformed by the renewing of the mind, resonates with this teaching. It suggests that transformation comes from an active engagement with God's purposes. As our encounter continued, I was given further insight into the nature of these divine appointments. Jesus explained that the spiritual battles occurring during the early morning hours are not confined to a single individual or isolated event. Rather, they are part of a larger, ongoing cosmic struggle between the forces of light and darkness. In this struggle, each instance of wakefulness serves as an opportunity to realign spiritual energies in favor of God's redemptive plan. I was informed that the actions taken during these hours, whether through intercessory prayer, reflective meditation, or verbal declarations, have the power to influence the overall spiritual state of the world. This understanding calls to mind the words of 2 Corinthians 10 verses 4-5, which describe the weapons of our warfare as being divinely powerful and capable of destroying strongholds. It is a reminder that the spiritual efforts made in these moments are part of a larger strategy designed to bring about positive change. Jesus then explained that the hours between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. are intentionally set apart as a time when God's spiritual work is most active. This is not a random occurrence, but a deliberate arrangement by the Creator. He taught that the quiet of the early morning creates an environment where the natural rhythms of the body are set aside, allowing a person to be more fully attuned to the supernatural. The simplicity of this explanation is reinforced by the biblical reminder in Ecclesiastes 3 verse 1, "There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under heaven." In this case, the early morning hours have been designated as a season for divine encounter and spiritual readiness. Then Jesus reminded me that the experience was not meant to be a source of anxiety or fear. On the contrary, his words were intended to empower and prepare me for a role that many had yet to recognize. He stated plainly, "I do not wake you to frighten you, but to collaborate with you in my redemptive work." He showed me countless instances where people's nighttime awakenings had prevented disasters, brought healing to families, and redirected spiritual trajectories. These were not coincidences, but carefully orchestrated divine interventions. When it was time for me to return, Jesus' final words resonated within my spirit. "Remember, my child, the hours between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. are not a curse but a blessing. They are not interruptions but invitations." My return to my physical body was as sudden as my departure. I awoke in a hospital, medical staff around me, my heart having been revived. But I was fundamentally changed. Since that experience, my life has been dedicated to sharing this revelation. I've spoken in churches, written books, and counseled countless individuals about the spiritual significance of these early morning hours. Not everyone understands. Some call me radical, some call me crazy. But those who have experienced these divine awakenings know the truth. They recognize that there is more to our existence than what meets the eye, more to our spiritual journey than what can be explained by science alone. To those who find themselves consistently awakened between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., I say, do not dismiss this. Do not ignore this. This is your invitation to something extraordinary. Pay attention. Listen. Pray. Declare. Your nighttime awakening might just be the key to transforming not just your life, but the lives of those around you. God is speaking. Are you listening?